Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is Saturday, the 8th of April 2017, and I'm David. Notice, I'm getting into practice not using it's not my surname either. When you read that article, you'll realise it's not your surname. It's not owned by you at all. We're getting into practice not using it. It's all part of the movement away from the great imprisonment, the great corporate imprisonment that has so many layers. Anyway, you'll know what I'm talking about a bit more if you watched my video yesterday, and underneath that video I put a link to an article entitled "Are You a Christian or Pagan Legal Fiction?" I'm also going to put a link to that article below this because it's an important article to read. I don't agree with all of it, of course, but it's important. And I do suggest you read it in its entirety, get right through it, and it's really quite fascinating what it has to say. Here is a quote from that article, and it's talking about surnames. In the English language, the prefix sur, it's from the French, isn't it? In the English language, the prefix sur means to put something on top of. Example, surcharge, surtax, surcoat, and of course surname. On the top of. Didn't Pontius Pilate put a false name, title, over the top of Jesus on the cross? So you've got there Jesus, the man who is the life, beneath this title, this false title, the King of the Jews, where he died, of course. It says cross here, but I believe it was a stake if you translate the word stavros. But anyway, he put the name above him. It's quite obvious to me what that means. And then we go down from that page, we read a little bit more here. What was Shakespeare, the pen name for Sir Francis Bacon, trying to tell us in Romeo and Juliet? In this quote here. "'Tis but thy name that is my enemy. Thou art thyself, though not a Montague. What's a Montague? It is nor hand, nor foot, nor arm, nor face, nor any other part belonging to a man. Oh, be some other name." What's in a name? That which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. So Romeo would, were he not Romeo called. Retain that dear perfection which he owes without that title. Romeo, doff thy name, and for that name, which is no part of thee, take all myself. So what you've got in that passage is fascinating, isn't it? Shakespeare's loaded with this stuff. I mentioned Richard II, and it's talking about the two facades, the two persons. And this one, and this is elsewhere as well, of course, in Shakespeare. And I think there's a clue in the fact that he says here, the pen name for Francis Bacon, but again, that's another matter. But what this little passage is saying, it's saying so much. And it's talking about, thou art thyself, and that's at the top of it, and at the bottom it says, take all myself. So we're talking about two beings, two selves, without the titles. Totally open heart, totally in accord with God, without the wedge, the thing that cuts it off, and the thing that, of course, the surname, which is, of course, being used against us now, as this article explains. Now, it is Easter, isn't it? It's approaching that time, Easter. Ishtar. But again, I'm not going to go into that. It is that time which is known as Easter. And the discussions are out there. The Good Friday programs are on. I notice it's going to be a Good Friday program about Judas Iscariot. It appears to me to be another attempt to make this traitor into a wonderful man. There's been other attempts, of course, with the Gospel of Judas, which was pushed by the nationalgeographic.com, which I have heard described as yet another engine of international corporate propaganda. And there's an article there, Lost Gospel Revealed, says Jesus asked Judas to betray him. Jesus asked him, apparently. in that lost gospel. But we know what they're up to, don't we, ladies and gentlemen? Now, there's a clue, isn't it? The clues are indeed all around us. Look at the names of the gospels. Which one has a surname? Out of all, not the gospels, out of all the disciples, the apostles, the disciples, the 12 apostles, which one has a surname? Is it John? Is it Peter? No, it's Judas Iscariot. He is the only one with a surname. He is the only one, therefore, with that wedge between the Christian name or the true name and God, isn't he? Again, this is consistent with what the Bible tells us about the lawful and legal situation in the world. And again, this is why, of course, in all the big organisations, all the government buildings, and such like, there is always the Bible, and it's always the King James Version, because therein you'll find plenty of clues as to what their framework is and how we've been duped into being it, inside it. You'll understand more of what I'm saying if you do read that article, Are You a Christian or Pagan Legal Fiction? But I think it's also important to note that Judas Iscariot, who they keep trying to turn into this wonderful man, this traitor into this wonderful man, was the only one of the disciples with a surname. Don't forget, we go back to Christ dying there with the title above him. The title in an attempt to cut him off from God, as it were. You can see that almost in the symbolism, can't you? So I shall leave you to think about that, ladies and gentlemen. And I shall also wish you a very good day, whatever it is you're doing. And I shall wish you also enjoyment in all your own study and research and the application of what you discover. That's the most important thing. Because what's the point in learning all this stuff if we can't begin to apply ourselves in a way that helps us live more closely in accord with God through his Son, Jesus Christ? What's the point? What's the point in learning all this stuff if it doesn't give you real freedom? Because that's where you find your real freedom. Think of that Montague, that little quote from Romeo and Juliet. The true freedom is, of course, without the mask. You know, when you relate to each other totally openly as men and women in accord with God through Christ. I shall leave that with you, ladies and gentlemen. I shall wish you a very good day, whatever it is you're doing. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to read that article. Don't forget to share it. Don't forget to discuss it amongst your friends. I don't know who wrote it, actually. Whoever it is, deserves a bit of a pat on the back. And I'm sure there's other information out there that endorse this, add to it. So do look it up, do share that as well, do get going, do get inspired. See you later.